If you think you've got a tough day at work today, or whatever might lie ahead of you, spare a thought for the chairman of the Conservative Party, who's been put out on the media round in the aftermath of those two disastrous defeats. I remind you, 2 5-digit majorities overturned, and some of the worst figures for a sitting government going back 40 or 50 years. So we welcome to the conversation Conservative MP and chairman of the Conservative Party, Richard Holden. Mr. Chairman, what excuse are you going to offer first? Governments lose by-elections, or it was a low turnout? Morning.
Good morning, Nick. So thank you for that introduction.
In Wellingborough in particular, the swing is the second biggest of all time in the post-World War II era. 28.5% is worse than Tamworth, worse than Selby and Ainstey. What do you think is going quite so horribly wrong at the moment?
Well, I think we've got to look at both these by-elections and the context in which they happened as well. We had an MP in Kingswood who stood down, and also, obviously, in Wellingborough, we had a parliamentary investigation which led to a recall petition, which led to an MP being forced to stand down as well. Not ideal circumstances for any form of by-election for any party, really. I mean, we saw back in, I think it was 2020 or 2019, 2021, I think, the by-election in Hartlepool, where we saw a Labour MP had been forced to stand down there, and they lost that seat. So the context of individual by-elections, I think, is also important for parties, whoever's having them and whoever's taking part in them as well.
I mean, it's a good attempted spin. It's a 28.5% swing. I don't think it can be explained by the individual context on its own.
Well, I mean, you could look at the difference between the two seats. There's quite a marked difference between the two by-election results. So I think individual context is important to take in each of these. The Prime Minister is very much targeting his time and efforts on trying to really address those big issues that I know people are facing right up and down the country. And one of the big ones of those has been over the last 18 months or so following Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine, and then those issues we've now seen in the Red Sea and the blocking of the Suez Canal route around inflation, which has been a real issue for families up and down the country. Now, we've made some progress on some of those big issues. There's an inflation come down from 11.1% to 4%, but we've still got a lot further to go to try and get it to that target rate.
And we're also, as of yesterday, in a recession.
Yes, and the big issue we've been facing is around inflation, and that feeds through to everything else. Obviously, it feeds through to interest rates, which affect businesses and families with mortgage rates.
But we do know the problems of it. I guess what I'm asking is that if he didn't go and campaign in the elections and you lost, he's been focusing on the other issues that you highlighted, and it doesn't look good. You can see how it's pretty grim for Conservative voters at the moment.
You're focusing on the economy as the big positive to point to on a day you've lost 2 by-elections by significant swings, on the morning after it was confirmed that the economy's in recession. I mean, is that really the single biggest positive you can point to?
Well, what I'd say on that is that, look, we've entered a technical recession, as you say. I hope we'll be moving out of that more quickly. One of the issues that we've seen, though, the biggest issue that came up on the doorstep was around cost of living, was around inflation. That's what we've tackled quite a lot already, but we've still got further to go. We've seen inflation drop from 11.1% to 4%, but it's still above that 2% target. Bank of England says we're going to be getting there hopefully within the next few months, and that's what I want to see is people really worried about things that are affecting their daily lives, like cost of living, and it's only with that sensible reductions in things like inflation that we can put cash back into more cash into public services as well.
The gist of this interview has been terrible results this morning. What can you do to get voters back? And just to leave on that note, the single thing that you want to focus people's minds on is the economy the day after you fell into recession.
Well, I think the country's fallen into recession.
Talking about local associations, you are the party chair, you're effectively running the campaign, but unless I'm aware, we don't know where you'll be standing in the general election. Is that correct, Chairman?
At the moment, I've not got a seat, yes, because my seat of North West Durham is being abolished, and the boundary changes actually very similarly to the way that Kingswood, which was up for the election this time, is also being abolished when it comes to the general election and split off to other parts of that Gloucestershire, Bristol area.
So what are you going to do? You won't be standing anywhere?
We've not decided yet, and obviously if I do go for selection anywhere, that will be very much down to the local associations as to whether or not they decide to choose.
So just to clarify, you are the Conservative Party chairman, And you've said if you go for selection at the upcoming general election. So even the chairman might desert the ship.
Well, I'm certainly not deserting anyone.
If you don't want to stand as an MP, how else am I to characterise that?
Why is the government limping on? Call an election.
Well, I think the last thing the people of Kingswood, for example, or Wellingborough wanted was to have another election. We saw that even in the recall petition in Wellingborough only got 13% support.
Well, they might not want another election, but the country probably does.
Well, I mean, by-elections are an opportunity for people to, they know they're not changing the government of the country during that period. It's pretty clear at the moment. We've seen over the last week or 10 days that, Labour have no plan for the country. We've seen Keir Starmer's not even managed to really change his party with all the issues we've seen from them. They've not got a policy background there in place at the moment. They've U-turned on all of their major policy pledges, although they're sticking to the outcomes, just not telling us how much they're going to spend. I think there's a good while to go. But Reform have made it very clear, and Richard Tice has made it very clear, that they want to cost the Conservatives as many seats as practically possible at the election. All that means is Keir Starmer in Downing Street. I don't think that anybody in this country who's voting for Reform wants to see Keir Starmer in number 10. Their ambition is to block Conservatives winning seats and therefore put Keir Starmer into Downing Street. They've made it very clear. You've read out that statement from them. That's what Reform UK want to do. They want to see Keir Starmer in Downing Street and not have a Conservative government.
But they're also taking votes away from the Conservatives. They're achieving that, aren't they? So you're losing votes to Reform.
Both of those. I remember those by-elections back in the mid-2010s where we saw the predecessor to Reform, UKIP, getting 50% of the vote in some cases in Clacton and in Rochester and Stroud back in the day. So we're not in that sort of circumstances at the moment. I think, though, the big thing that I've noticed as well is, in addition to obviously the results themselves, as you just talked about to the viewers, also the turnout figures being so substantially down in both of the by-elections, about half of what we saw at the last general election as well. We'll have to see whether or not anybody wants me, Nick.
But that's not the question, is it? What I thought I might hear is, yes, I'm absolutely determined to represent the Conservative Party, yes, and I'm in active conversation, Nick. I can't tell you the areas, obviously, but there are 2 or 3 or 4 areas that I've targeted. It will be down to the good voters, of course, the Conservatives of Upper Whoop Whoop, but I want to be part of the next government. That's what I was hoping to hear, and I hear from the chairman, well, if, and I hope, and maybe,
we'll have to see.
Chairman.
We'll have to see if there's any vacancies and people decide to stand down or retire.